Welcome to another edition of eYe on Education. In this series, we are featuring the candidates for the Board of Education in the November 7th municipal election. I'm your host, Ed Lecious, and joining us now is Doris Hohensee, candidate, former school board member. Doris, welcome to eYe on Education.
Thank you very much. Thank you for inviting me.
So for our viewers today who may not remember when you were on the board, why don't you tell them, who is Doris Hohensee?
I had a good time for 4 years. I learned an awful lot about the board and the district and the teachers and the students. There's a lot to learn in our district with 17 schools and a few extras after that between the two high schools, 3 middle schools, 12 elementary schools. So it took almost 6 months to feel like you have your feet under you, to know what the scope of the district was. So my idea was I wanted as much information as I could get. I often had trouble doing that, and after a while I had to put in right to know requests to get just the basic information. So I was a little bit contentious in that way because I kind of took my job seriously. I figured I'm overseeing it, and to oversee the district, I didn't want private personal information, but I wanted information. Mm-hmm. I wanted to be proactive. I wanted to know what was going on so I could see what I could do to improve things.
So after now being off the board a few years, you've decided to run again. How come?
I'm watching, listening to parents, and there's things that need to be fixed. I mean, we're switching away from the academics with the social emotional learning, which is very contentious, and parents are not exactly happy with that, not all of them. And meanwhile, our math proficiency is 32%. Our reading proficiency is 41%. So what gives them the right to just abandon academics to install this whole new program when they're not fulfilling their mission to teach them how to read and write? And that's the basics. So maybe it's the priorities. It's like the middle school. I voted against that when I was in there, $120 million. At best, it'll be 80% full. We didn't need such a big set of buildings. They want 800, they're equipped now for 800 in each middle school. There's only like 500 and something in each of the older two, and the new one will get Elm Street, and they had a little bit over 800. So we didn't have a need to expand, maybe to fix. I asked at the time for the demographics. What are the students, because I knew they were decreasing. I could never get them to talk about that. Give me the facts and talk about it. So why are we making these really important critical decisions without enough analysis and review? So I just think I may not be able to turn the board because I'm just one person, but I'll ask the questions. I'll get things out there. And maybe, if I'm lucky, they'll start looking at things that are sometimes more important than just getting pushed along.
Do you feel that the change in philosophy and the educational part of things is due in any way to the kids still coming out of the COVID era, or?
No. I think we're well past that. I think we're back. We're playing catch up because it was hard for them to learn. They learned unevenly. Some families provided tutors. Some families were there all day with their students. Others, they didn't have the luxury, and they did as best they could. So the kids are probably not all on an even keel in terms of what they picked up that missing year. But I think they're starting to go into more behavioral modification with social emotional learning than strictly academics. So I'm concerned about that. I'm concerned why they're not focusing on what their original mission is. Why are they trying to expand before they lock down and accomplish the original mission?
Now, back when you were on the board, as you say, you were having difficulties getting information.
Yes.
There were other disagreements amongst the board members themselves on various issues. The superintendent situation was unstable. That part, the unstableness, at least at central office, seems to have cured itself for now. Compared to when you were on the last couple of years, how would you say things are better, same, worse?
It sounds like things are much better. For instance, we asked when we had the scores, the test scores from all the different schools, we asked what were the scores. No, we can only give you the composite. I'm like, I can get the composite off the state website. I want to know the Department of Education website. I want to know how each school is doing. So what schools we can help, what schools need help. Oh, I promise I'll get you that. There was an assistant superintendent who later became acting superintendent. Never got it. We put it in for a right to know when we couldn't. You know, we had a list of 4 or 5 pages where they would dole out favors and sometimes give us a little bit. But that's not the way you run a tight ship. That's not the way you oversee a district. So I'm hoping, you know, if this new superintendent is as good as I'm hearing, things will go a little bit smoother. But still, you've got to ask the questions. You've got to be interested in finding out what's going on. Mm-hmm. When they passed the middle school, everybody saw, shiny new building, oh, with lovely new labs. They didn't ask the right questions. So.
One of the issues that you will be taking on if you are elected or re-elected is the redistricting on the elementary schools. Yeah. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I'm not so sure what we have to do in terms of shutting down. The redistricting is going to be emotional, and it's going to be difficult for a lot of people. But one of the things that we haven't looked into, and we mentioned this when they were redoing the middle schools, Elm Street, which I don't know if it's not spoken for yet, but we thought we would suggest that they put some special ed classes in there. We have a couple hundred students that we bus out of Nashua at a good distance, at a great cost, for specialists elsewhere. Could we hire a specialist and tell Hudson and Litchfield and Pelham and Hollis and say, here, this is a lot closer, and start becoming the new destination for a few of these things, and incrementally find out which ones are cost effective to do in-house. Keep those students off the bus, give them more free time, let them be part of our community. Could we do that for some of the elementary schools? If we fill up a couple of classrooms in each building, and save money at the same time, because it wouldn't just be our students, it would be some out of district.
Like a regional approach.
But they do that. That's where we're going up sometimes out of state for these specialists, because we have to under federal law. But, and I'm sure they're bused from a lot of different places. But at some point, when you've got a critical mass, you can do it in-house. So have we investigated that before we just throw away buildings and close them down? You know, there's a lot of things to look at. It's not just a simple decision. So,
what do you see going forward as the next 2 or 3 issues that this next board is going to have to address beyond redistricting going forward?
Well, redistricting is the biggest one. I also want to hope we could look at bullying. We've had some incidents of that when I was on the board in a middle school, that a video that went viral. We weren't allowed to even discuss the policy, what could be done to improve things. We were just kept out of it. It was an administrative issue. That's not acceptable. I just heard from a friend. She's pulling her son out of a high school, bullying. I heard from somebody else. They're pulling 2 kids out. You know, it's like, when are we going to sit down and address the things that we've got right in front of us? And it's just letting the board do what the board is elected to do.
If there's one thing, if you're reelected, that you could accomplish in this next term, what would that be?
Transparency. It's not just transparency to parents, because they ask questions and they want to know it. Transparency to the board, transparency from the administration. Like, for instance, when a psychologist takes your student out of class, they don't tell the parent. If they did that in the private sector, take a minor and treat, I mean, we're talking mental health, the psychologist, they lose their license. In a school, they can just do it. I don't want to know maybe everything of why they're doing it, but I want to know that they're doing it. How much class time is missing after 48 hours if they know it's not neglect or abuse and they haven't reported to the state. Notify the parent that we did take your child out, because I get reports from parents and they're saying, why did it, you know, I couldn't do anything about it. I asked the psychologist last time, I said, you write the rules. They wouldn't. I gave them draft rules. We won't look at it. They don't want any rules. How is that? You can't operate that way. So there's just little things. I don't know that there's anything really criminal or wrong going on, but there's ways to make it just a little bit more above board and better for parents.
For the folks who are watching us today, getting ready to go vote November 7th, why should they vote for you for the Board of Education?
Because I will ask the questions. I am not afraid of asking questions. I don't expect to win votes necessarily, but I want a respectful dialogue on the different sides of an issue. When I was on there last time, I used to get a lot of parents funneling things through me because they knew I was willing to speak up for them. So if they want a voice, I'm the voice of the taxpayer, the parent, the students. I love teachers, but the primary are the students, the parents, and the taxpayers. Those are my constituents. If a teacher's in the district and votes for me, that's a constituent, but we have to start getting back to basics.
Doris Hohensee, good luck on November 7th.
Thank you very much.
You've been watching a special edition of eYe in Education featuring the candidates for the Board of Education on November 7th. Doris Hohensee has been our guest. I'm Ed Leicius. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.